Hi there, my name is Tom Wintner. I'm the chairman of the Board of Trustees at Camp Belknap. It's a pleasure to be talking to you on this candlelight in 2020. I was a camper and a leader at Belknap from 1982 to 1991, which is why I get to sport this nice 10-year jacket. For those of you who have one, if you take good care of it, it will last you over 30 years as it has for me. I was also the camp bugler for many of those years, at least 5 or 6 of those years that I was both a camper and a leader. I'm here today to do something virtually that we normally do in person at the chapel during the late July or August summer board meeting, which is to recognize outgoing board members for their service. The Board of Trustees at Belknap has term limits, which are 12 years. So no board member can serve longer than 12 years for any one time. And that means that we have a natural cycling on and off of the board, and it allows us to bring in new members to the board, diversity of opinions, diversity of ages, and years at Belknap, and really round out the board. This year we are losing 4 incredibly august board members. John Wilkins, Frank Kennison, John Snow, and John Malinowski. That's a group that includes 2 former board chairs, John Wilkins and Frank Kennison, 1 former vice chair and chair of the Budget and Finance Committee, that's John Snow, and 1 person in John Malinowski who's given either slightly more or slightly less than 40 years of service to Belknap, which is really quite remarkable when you think about it. So while the loss of any board member is a big deal and they all should be recognized, in this particular year we've got a sort of a particularly remarkable group in terms of their service to Belknap generally and also to the Belknap board. And what you're going to hear next is actually a few words on each of them individually, provided by different members of the board, and then I'll wrap it up with a few words about John Malinowski, who was my contemporary at camp. So enjoy, and thank you all.
Hi everyone, my name is Dave Humphrey, and it's my great honor to recognize John Snow on his departure from the board after 12 years of service. The funny thing is, this isn't the first John Snow I've been fortunate to spend time with at Belknap. John's son, also John Snow, was my camper in 1995 or 1996. I can still picture his smiling 10-year-old face, kind, warm, and selfless. A child who once stayed at camp in crutches with his leg in a cast because he loved Belknap so much. So it was no surprise to me when I joined the Belknap board and got to know this John Snow. What a wonderful person he is. Kind, warm, and selfless. Of course, John's contributions to Belknap have been extraordinary. He attended as a camper and sent 3 boys here. He's served on the board since 2008, including as the treasurer and vice chair. But when I think about John's time on the board, I don't think about those things. I think about how fortunate we all have been to serve with John Snow, the person. I think of his remarkable leadership by example. Perhaps more than any other trustee, John embodies the Belknap motto, God first, the other fellow second, myself last. God first. John's a spiritual man. His presence is unmistakable, contemplative, considerate, and driven by a sense of purpose. It's with this spirit that John co-authored Belknap's strategic plan. And it's with this grace that John always brought any discussion back to Belknap's leadership, its values, and its mission. The other fellow second, John is always thinking of others. He's an active listener. He's most likely to compliment a fellow trustee on hard work or a thoughtful comment. He's also most likely to sit with you at lunch and ask deeply and genuinely how you are doing. Myself last. John received the Horace Blood Award in 2018 for his exemplary service to the board. What struck me was not that John received this much-deserved award, but how selflessly he did so. I remember John's speech as all of camp sat in the chapel, cadets antsy to get back up to their cabins. In a few short words, John captured the audience as he emphasized the importance of a life of service, of thinking of others before yourself, and of giving more than you receive. That is what I think of when I think of John. Certainly someone who has given much more to Belknap than he has received, and we're all so grateful. John, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Timmy, hi! Greetings from the Ocean State. My name is Melissa Adams Ludwig, and I've been on the Board of Trustees since 2012. I am currently the chair of the Community and Inclusion Committee. And during the year, I live and work as a psychiatrist in Rhode Island, and during the summer, I'm lucky enough to live right up against Camp Belknap in a house that my grandfather, Hank Adams, bought in 1936, so his family could always be part of the Belknap community. Yay! Today I am tasked happily with talking with you about board member extraordinaire and superstar human being, Frank Kennison. I actually wish that I could freestyle Love Supreme this or something, because Frank is just that awesome, but I can't, so I'm just going to tell you about him. So Frank and his family also have a really long legacy of involvement with Camp Belknap. Frank himself came to camp in 1961 and returned for many summers, at first as a camper, then as a hurricaner, which was that decade's LC, and then as a kitchen corps member. Subsequently, he and his family remained very involved with Belknap for many decades, and then he returned to active service with us in 2007 when he joined the Board of Trustees. During his tenure on the board, he's been a part of, I think, basically every committee. He was highly influential on the Personnel Committee, on the Property Committee. He spearheaded the search committee that brought us our current directors, Steph and Seth, and with them he has been one of the people who have really helped us lay down our strategic plans to sustain the joy that's going to take us into the next 100 years fabulously. He was important in finalizing the Farm Island campaign, in helping us to settle the Bell McWhorton gift. He has shepherded a number of people through their transition onto the board and provided mentorship. He has been our board of directors president from 2016 through 2019, during years where we've had many, many dynamic projects going on, and he's always showed tireless commitment to all of those projects, all of the committees. He works as a lawyer himself in Concord, New Hampshire, and has lent many, many hours of legal advice and direction as we have wound our way through many different projects. I think that the most important thing to say, though, is that Frank really embodies Belknap values and the Belknap spirit. You can't work with someone who is more kind, humble, energetic, funny, willing to spend time working through any kind of question or any kind of difficulty so that we all together move collaboratively into the future. He is always compassionate, conscientious, creative, committed, and consistent. Personally, I want to thank him very much for his mentorship as I settled into my own role on the board, and also for his friendship. I think I speak for certainly everyone on the board, and I think anyone in the Belknap community that knows Frank when I say that we will all miss you terribly. Thank you, Frank. Thank you so much for everything.
I'm honored to share a few thoughts regarding our good friend John Wilkins. Now, we all recognize Belknap as a leadership development institution or camp experience. So leadership is the first of two topics I'd like to share, as I see John as a role model of Belknap leadership. Over 117 seasons, other than all of our directors, few have shown more pure Belknap leadership than John Wilkins. So here are some examples. As a then midget, or what we now call cadet camper, John first attended Belknap in the early 1950s. He was an honor camper many times, an elected CB club member, receiving honors more than 3 times before receiving senior rec. He is a very, very proud Hurricaner and one of only 4 current board members who can still remember the wonderful traditions of being a member of this great leadership institution. For those of us who are fortunate enough to have been a Hurricaner, most consider that summer as the best experience of our Belknap career. As a cabin leader, board member, and chairman, John's leadership was outstanding. For just a minute, I'd like to focus on John's leadership as chairman. Under his leadership, Belknap developed and implemented our first strategic plan. Our endowment grew from $1 million to $3 million. A change in directors was implemented. A new main dock was funded and built. Belknap's financial position improved significantly. He managed Belknap through a committee structure, which was the forerunner of our board governance today. Through all these efforts, John always led by example. With all his Belknap accomplishments, one might ask, how and why did he get all this done? How did John have an entire career, many moons, of pure Belknap leadership? Well, that's the second topic I'd like to share about John, and I'll answer those questions. It's simply this: it's character. Think about it. Leadership is a direct result of certain behaviors, character traits, and decisions we all make. We all know leadership when we see it, and we have seen it time and time again with our interactions with John. So here's a leader I, and I know all of you, admire. First, John has a true love of all things Belknap. He would be the first to tell you his Belknap experience had a huge impact on his life. From our motto, traditions, and values, John embodies all aspects of Belknap leadership. The lessons from woodcraft are a deep part of John Wilkins' character. His thoughtful, deep respect for the other fellow is who he really is and how he really leads. He's a team player and exhibits this leadership style in all Belknap work and well beyond. He's a person of incredible character and integrity. It's impossible to spend time with John and not leave hugely impressed. The combination of humility, caring, dependability, reliability, and certainly generosity are character traits of John Wilkins and his leadership style. Finally, since John believes Belknap is bigger than any one person or event, he has worked diligently over the years with the goal of making Belknap a place where homegrown leaders make good boys better. It's been his passion. So in conclusion, we're not here just to celebrate John's service to the Belknap Board of Trustees over the past 12 years. No, no, no. We're here to thank John for an entire lifetime since the early 50s of pure Belknap leadership. John is leaving this board knowing he did his fair share of work for a place he loves. And as a result of his entire career of leadership, Belknap is a better place. Belknap is a better place today because of John Wilkins.
Hi everybody, it's Tom Wintner again, this time with a different background because it's 97 degrees outside and I couldn't be out there with my 10-year jacket. So I'm here to recognize John Malinowski, who's stepping down from the board after 12 years of distinguished service. And I'm also incredibly proud to recognize John Malinowski as this year's recipient of the Horace Blood Award, which is one of the highest honors at camp. For those of you who don't know, or if you're like me and you don't remember the precise wording of these things, let me read to you what the Horace Blood Award is all about. Quote, "This award, established by the camp board, honors Dr. Horace Blood for his devotion to the improvement and perpetuation of Camp Belknap. his generosity, and continuing dedicated leadership as chairman of the camp board for over 20 years. Dr. Blood is a former camper, leader, staff member, and camp doctor, given with grateful appreciation on the occasion of the 60th anniversary of his association with Camp Belknap. The Horace Blood Award is to be presented in succeeding years to those members of the Camp Belknap board who have demonstrated similar devotion and effort on behalf of Camp Belknap, or a friend of the camp who exhibits the same devotion. So this award doesn't actually need to be given every year, and it isn't, in fact. It's voted on by previous recipients of the award, as well as by members of the executive committee of the Belknap Board of Trustees, which is me as chair, Vice Chair Dave Humphrey, Treasurer Bob Dahl, Secretary Mark Kesslin, and at-large executive committee member Ann Spry. So now let me tell you a little bit about John Malinowski, or as most of you and we know him, Johnny Mal, or just plain Mal, M-A-L. And let me tell you a little bit about why he's so deserving of this award. His first year at Belknap was 1980. That's 40 years ago. Yes, Mal, you're getting old. He was a camper. He started as a camper. He then rose up through the leadership to the level of senior DH, which he served as for several years. He then later became the program director. He also did a couple of things that many leaders don't typically do, at least those who go through a progression like the one he did. He was the camp photographer, sort of unofficial and then official, for many, many years. Not just when he was actually at camp serving as a leader or as program director, but also for years and years thereafter. He would come back for a few days, for a week, fit it in with his studies or with his professorial work, to document the camp setting, to document woodcraft, to document a change day, whatever the case might be. He was there, and he did that year after year after year. He also, because of his interest in sort of the camping industry generally, helped to organize and put together several research studies at Belknap involving camp and campers, much of which he did in conjunction with Chris Thurber, who was the architect of those studies, but also some other projects. And of course, he was a board member for the past 12 years. So it's an incredibly distinguished list of service. And he managed to do all of this while becoming a tenured professor of geography at West Point, where he still sits today. That little school in New York that's not really very difficult to get into. So several things stand out about Mal, many of which were pointed out by those who nominated him for this award. And I'm just going to list 5 highlights so that this doesn't take too long, because otherwise we could go on forever. First, his knowledge about Camp Belknap and its history is encyclopedic. And it's not just a passing fancy or a hobby. Anytime a board member had a question about whether there was precedent for doing something, whether something that we were considering doing or our directors were considering doing had been done before, we would always turn to Mal, and he would almost always know. And he would say, oh yeah, that was something that we actually did in the early 80s, but we decided against it for reasons X, Y, and Z. So having that kind of historical perspective was invaluable to the board. Second, and sort of in a related vein, his knowledge of the camping industry as a whole is vast. He has always been sort of a student of the camping industry, the American Camping Association, the various other sort of organizations that work with camping, and especially boys camping throughout the United States. And this became particularly important to the board when we as a board started our strategic planning process about 8 years ago. And it remains important today, having an in-house expert on the camping industry has really helped us to shape Belknap's future as a residential summer camp for boys. Third, and I alluded to this earlier, Mal's a great photographer. I'm not actually sure when he developed this interest, but it was at least as early as his early leadership years, because I remember him being the architect of the end of summer slideshow already back in the late 1980s. Unlike a lot of erstwhile Belknap photographers, however, he continued to do that work, as I mentioned before, year after year, summer after summer, no matter what else was going on in his life. And as a consequence, Mal's 30 plus years of Belknap photos are really irreplaceable. They're a historical record of the daily joys of being a camper and living the Belknap experience. Fourth, Mal is a mensch, in the best sense of that great Yiddish word, which means a person of integrity and honor. This played out time and time again during board meetings. Here's what one board member said about this trait when he nominated Mal for this award. Quote, "What I remember most about his years on the board was his ability to get to the heart of any board discussion. He could be insightful and sarcastic at the same time, but usually his point was spot on. He was able to articulate the pros and cons of a discussion or issue, and at times redirect the board's attention to the most important issue at hand. I always appreciated the candor of his opinions, for whether you agreed or not, you had to respect his focus." And I'm pretty sure that sentiment is shared by just about every member of the current board. And for those of us who knew Mal as a leader in the 80s and 90s, this character trait is essentially unchanged. He had it back then, he has it today. He's a deeply, deeply kind individual with a deep, deep love for Belknap, but he's also not afraid to voice an opinion, even if it's not a popular one. And even if it's coming from a different angle than the mainstream at Belknap. And it's those kinds of people that make an institution better. Finally, and I'll make this personal, even though I think my sentiments are shared by other members of the board who, like me, came onto the board after Mal did, as well as other former leaders who, like me, came up through the ranks when Mal was in the senior leadership. Mal has always been a leader to whom I've looked up and whose opinions I have really respected. So he's been more than just a leader, he's also been a mentor. He was the quintessential, ultra kind, ultra intelligent, ultra funny person that makes the Belknap leadership so great. Dozens and dozens of Belknap campers and leaders, just like me, owe at least some part of their growth to Mal's tutelage and leadership by example, whether he knows it or not. As one nominator summed it all up with respect to the Horace Blood Award, quote, "Mal has submitted a lifetime of good works for the benefit of Belknap, and he deserves to be honored for his dedication to the improvement and perpetuation of the Belknap experience." So, Johnny Mal has served the Belknap board with distinction for 12 years, and on behalf of the board, I'm pleased to present him with the Horace Blood Award in recognition of his service. I'm only sorry that this can't be done in person at the chapel for the whole camp to see, where I'd be holding up a plaque with his name added to the list of other Belknap greats on it, but that should in no way diminish the recognition that Mal deserves today. So, Timmy hi Mal, thank you, we'll miss you, and you're always welcome back at Belknap